Well, I guess it's interesting. Originally I wanted to be a journalist. And how I got into filmmaking was I was working at the school newspaper at my CJEP, and I got really frustrated with how in journalism, when you're talking about a story, you have to report in an objective way. You're just kind of an observer and you say what happened. And I really felt that I wanted to comment more on what was happening in the stories that I was saying. So I figured that film would be a good outlet for that. And so then I applied to go to film school in university. And originally I was, doing short fiction films, and I really thought that I would be working in fiction. But I had an opportunity with the National Film Board. They had a program which was called Real Diversity, and it's a program for emerging filmmakers of color, where you can propose a film, and they'll give you, if you win the competition, they give you a chance to direct your own documentary. So I had an idea to do a film on the history of the Chinese in Canada, and this kind of history that affected part of my family. And I proposed it to the NFB, so they give me a chance to do my first film. And it's really because of doing that film that I switched my focus as a filmmaker to do documentary. I really fell in love with the documentary genre. Status Quo is a film about women's rights in Canada. It looks at the history of the women's movement here, but also at the struggles that continue today. So it kind of looks at battles that women won in the past and where we stand on these issues today. So the film takes a look at three main topics, I would say. It looks at violence against women, child care, and abortion rights or access to abortion. And I take a historical look on it, but also I look into the present day issues that are going on today on those issues. So for example, in the film, we go to New Brunswick, where presently women are being blocked access to abortion and no one's talking about this issue. So we go to an abortion clinic in New Brunswick and we see what the women there face. Another issue we talk about is Native women in Canada and the violence that they face. We have over 600 missing and murdered Indigenous women here. So we talk about that. We visit a rape crisis center in the present, and we also talk about the fact that except for Quebec, there's no national child care system in Canada, and how all those things affect women's equality and women's freedom in Canada. Well, I guess one of the biggest motivators for me working in documentary is the ability for film to be a tool for social change. A lot of the films I do, they're social political films. They're films that are used by lots of advocates for whatever issues that they're dealing with. So I think I'm really inspired by how documentary gives a voice, to the people that are in the documentary. I mean, I'm just a filmmaker. People let me into their lives, and they reveal such amazing truth about themselves, about different issues, and really these are people that are going through those issues. I've done a film on the Chinese Canadian experience immigrating to Canada. I've done a film on refugees in Canada, and I've done a film on women's rights here. So it's all those people that kind of open up their lives and their lives' experiences to me. I try to incorporate that and incorporate their voices and their points of views into the film. So what's interesting to me about documentary is it's real stories, real people and real situations. And there's deep truth that can be had to that. And sometimes the most dramatic stories are the ones that are real. I've had such a privilege to go into places and to know lives that I would never experience just being a regular Canadian living here. I've seen what it is to be separated from your family and live through decades of racism in this country. I've seen what it is to have to flee your country and be stuck in a kind of system, a refugee system where you don't know if you'll be safe here in Canada or not. And I've also seen, how it is to be a woman that's experienced domestic violence, or a woman that faces, a gauntlet of shame trying to walk into an abortion clinic. So those are the stories that really inspire me as a filmmaker, and through making the films, it's really inspiring after the film is done, how the people that are in the film take ownership of the film, and they use the film to tell their stories, to share their points of view, and to push the causes that they're fighting for in the film. So I guess, you know, if for anything, that's why I'm much more interested in documentary. Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, documentary is a great example of the intersection between art and politics, you know. It's not just having a political message, it's really giving a story, giving an image, and giving a voice to that message, and really providing humanity to the, you know, your political cause. You know, all the films I do are advocacy films. They have a point of view, but it's when you put what is the human cost of those issues, or if you put a human face to those stories, people connect, audiences connect. You know, you might not be a refugee, but when you see the world through the eyes of a refugee here, you begin to understand, you know, what needs to change about certain policies. So I think documentary is that perfect marriage. You know, you're telling stories through people's point of view, but you know, it's also about the music, the editing, and you know, the camera angles that you choose to tell those stories. You know, in some of my films, I've incorporated poetry of the past. You know, the Chinese immigrants that came here, they wrote graffiti. They were put into prisons here, and they wrote graffiti on the walls talking about how they missed their families back home, how Canada wasn't what they had expected. And in the film, to tell part of that story, we had people read those poems, you know, to really kind of bring to life that you know, that experience of the first Chinese coming here. So there's always things you can do through art in a way to make the political message even stronger. I'm currently working on a film. For now, the name of it is Family Secrets, and it's actually an experimental docufiction. So it's a found footage film. Where I've collected reels and reels of people's home movies, you know, scenes of weddings and birthday parties and the Christmas dinner. And I've interviewed several of my own family members or friends' family about real family secrets in their families. And everybody has these kind of secrets. It's like those taboo issues that nobody in the family talks about. You know, in the Chinese culture, there's a notion or a concept called saving face, where, you know, everyone knows of maybe an embarrassing thing, but no one talks about it. So I was kind of interested in exploring those family secrets that, in a way, are kind of common knowledge to everyone in a family, but no one really ever talks about these things in the open or shows them in the open. So the film is kind of a montage of, you know, iconic or stereotypical family scenes, but the soundtrack is kind of these layers of the family secrets being revealed. And I also use a lot of found audio, like old recordings from answering machines that I found, or even recordings of my sister and I singing children's songs together as kids, and kind of put all that together, and it becomes like a new reality, or it's like an impression of a memory of a secret, that lays somewhere in the back of your family. The footage I'm using in the film, it's all 8mm film and Super 8, so it dates anywhere from I've got footage for my family from the 50s up until probably maybe the late 80s or something, but it's all stuff from my mother's childhood, strangers, but it's all 8mm. So that would be in the 50s, and then and Super 8. Mm-hmm. So it's all actual film footage. Well, for sure. In general, I think Canada has an issue with distributing films. In general, a lot of times these films get made and then they don't necessarily see the light of day outside of a kind of festival circuit. We're fortunate in Canada in some ways that we have a really rich documentary history, and documentary is something we do very well here in this Canada. There's a whole history with the National Film Board. In terms of changing, I'd love to see more documentary festivals and documentary kind of more promoted in the mainstream. Things like Cinema Politica are amazing for the kind of documentaries that I do, for social political documentaries, and also for giving people in the general population, people at universities, a taste of the power of documentary film because it's so accessible. And one thing that I really love that Politica does is they involve the community in the film screenings. You know, they involve people who are directly affected by the issues that are explored in whatever film it may be, or whose lives are actually, you know, featured in the film, and they really invite those community members to partake in the screenings and become part of the, you know, showcasing the film, which I think is terrific because it draws more people to the audience. You know, documentary or the act of watching a political documentary can be a very politicizing act in and of itself, and to watch these kind of things in a group, you really get a great discussion going after the film. So, you know, to have more venues where people can see these things, not just by themselves on Netflix or with the DVD, but in groups, you know, it's how you raise consciousness, it's how you get these discussions, and hopefully you move towards change. A lot of times the things that are covered in documentary things are not stories of the mainstream that you'll see, you know, in whatever theater, and they're stories that need to be told because they're important. You know, we do have a public funding system, but I think the emphasis has to be put more on towards the quality of the stories that we're telling, the importance of the stories that we're telling, as opposed to dollars at the box office. You know, like how much money the film will bring in. You know, we live beside the United States. They do big, huge budget films really well. And I think where, as Canadians, or here where we can focus our energies and our money towards, would be telling really compelling, real stories that don't necessarily take the same kind of budget as a big blockbuster Hollywood film. You know, so I would encourage the funders to move away from this model where it's kind of all about the bottom line. There's all different ways of getting films made. You know, you can have a broadcaster that brings money to the table as well. You know, things online now, like smaller budget films, you know, things like Kickstarter are great. And what's really great about film is the technology to make a film is getting cheaper and cheaper, you know. You can have an editing system in your home now. You can buy a small camera that would have good sound and good image to be able to make those films. And you can also self-distribute on the internet. So in a way, stories or films that would have never gotten made in the past are getting made now through kind of more simpler means, you know, but the technology is becoming more accessible, either price-wise or, you know, it's becoming more user-friendly. So that's great that more and more people can get their hands on a camera to tell their own stories.